morning.
Good morning. We really tried hard not to be awkward
Mhm.
this second podcast. I don't know if it worked. I don't
I
think
don't
it worked.
listen. I guess learning how to start a podcast is something we're gonna have to figure out.
I think we need an intro so that we don't have to intro every single time we start the podcast.
Yeah, we'll
But
figure it out.
yeah. So it's been a week almost. I don't remember what day we recorded last
Yeah,
week.
just about a
But it's been
week.
a week. Yeah. And so we thought today we would talk about some feedback that we got about that first episode.
Mhm.
So did you get feedback? I had some people message me and give me some feedback that I thought was really kind and helpful, and some feedback that wasn't. So
Yeah, I mean, I think I got a little bit more negative feedback than positive, which is fine. I mean, that's how we learn and grow. But
yeah,
yeah, most of the feedback I got, honestly, um, wasn't necessarily on like the podcast. It was
right.
more just like encouragement to continue exploring, this new version of me and deep diving into it, and a lot of people kind of just cheering us on. So that was really
Yeah.
nice.
That was really nice. Um, so one of the pieces of feedback that I got that I thought was really important was, or just something I didn't think about when we were talking about it was, somebody had told me that the thing that stood out for them was a recognition of how, as we evolve throughout our lives and change and explore new versions of ourselves, that it makes sense that the people we haven't seen in a long time would be very disoriented by that because they haven't been around us for like 5 years or 10 years or whatever. And that stood out to me because I remember, going away to college and then like coming home and being around family who I hadn't seen all year long. It was disorienting for them to be like, who are you? Like, who is this person now? And so for them, it really does feel like you changed overnight. Like,
Yeah,
it
like
probably
you abandoned
feels
them or
right, or that like it is two-faced, I guess. Like,
yeah.
oh,
You know what it
you're
reminds me of? Have you seen that meme? There's like a viral meme and it's like, now that you went and got your degree, you think you're better than me or whatever.
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
some of that comes along with it too, is your growth might make them feel judged because they may realize they've been stagnant, and then you've been like developing. So I feel like there's maybe some self-judgment that plays into
Yeah.
that as well.
100% changes as we evolve, that can really bring up some stuff for the people around you who are kind of stagnant or maybe aren't living the lives that they want to
Some
live,
jealousy.
or yeah, maybe some envy.
Envy.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought that was a good point. I hadn't thought about that when we were um having the discussion. So I thought that was really cool feedback that
Yeah. So how let's take an example of a time that that's happened to you. How did you navigate it? And I know that in the discussion regarding this particular comment, it was in
yeah,
reference to the fact that it should help us have more empathy with people who are kind of,
right.
judging our growth. But I'm just curious how you handled that. And I know it's probably younger April, so I'm really excited to hear it.
Right. I was real fiery. I mean, so I've changed a lot. We talked about that in episode one. So for those listening who haven't listened to the first episode, I encourage you to go listen to that to learn a little bit more about what we're talking about here. But I've changed. There's been many different versions of me since I was 18, and I've handled the reactions to that change very differently throughout different points in my life. So when I was 18 or 19, 20, it was definitely a lot more guardedness and anger, and I really don't care what you think about this version of me, right? It was like very aggressive for sure. And then I think as I aged and learned a little bit more about myself. Um, I kind of dissociated from a lot of the criticism. I think in my early 20s, mid 20s, I was just busy raising kids and like trying to survive. So, it was not really, I didn't have the energy to be as angry. I was just kind of, I was just kind of dissociated. Like, okay, whatever. I don't really care what these people think about what I'm doing or how I'm behaving. I would say now in my 40s, I probably reverted closer to my 18-year-old self. I'm definitely a more like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I am who I am. You're going to either want to be a part of my life or you're not going to want to be a part of my life. So I have learned to just be okay being who I am and not being as impacted emotionally by the reactions of people around me to those changes. When I was 18, I was definitely impacted emotionally by the emotions of the people around me. So I would just take on those emotions. And I think I've done a little bit better job of being able to create some boundary around other people's emotions and my own emotions. And I still
Yeah.
struggle with that, but it's gotten better.
So I think for my own like observation of you,
Yeah.
it would be because when we first met, definitely like anger was for sure
Yeah,
like the most dominant emotion.
for
And I
sure.
think that anytime we feel that we're being criticized or judged, right, it fires up our defenses. And so anger was a really easy one for you. I think it was your
Yeah.
default. And I've noticed now, like you can kind of start with the anger, but you're quicker to process, like, wait, what does this really mean? Okay, that hurt my feelings.
Hmm.
This just brought up something, reminded me of this other time or whatever. And so I think you're doing a lot better at identifying the actual emotion instead of just letting it
Yeah.
all present as anger. And so I think that that
Right.
comes with growth as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. You and I just had that happen recently where I yelled at you and was passive
good.
aggressive
Mhm.
and I was not very kind to you and you handled it so well. I mean, you were even though you definitely wanted to be like this bitch is really calling me right now and giving me attitude. You responded with, I'll try to do better next time. I'm sorry that upset you." But all written all over your face was like, "I am gonna fight her right now." Like
I
I
think I was just so I was like, she is literally serious. She's seriously pissed at me for not reading her mind, is basically what it came down to. And I was like,
right,
okay, I'm gonna own my piece of that. I apologize. I couldn't read your mind, right? Like I don't know where we're
right,
supposed to go with that, but then I was like, okay, well, I need to end this phone call because I knew myself if I had stayed on it, it was probably not gonna go in a great direction.
right.
And so then I was just like cooking and like choking down tears, and then like, okay, well, we're probably never gonna be friends again. And I guess holistic mental health
Catastrophizing
is
our
going right down the toilet. Like we haven't even started it, right? Because that's how I handle all that stuff is immediate worst case scenario. Anytime there's a disagreement, it's like the end, right? Like
the end. Yeah, we're
we're
never gonna
never
be talk
coming back
again.
from this. Exactly. Exactly. It's friendship bankruptcy. You can't come back.
Right,
So, or it's going to take 7 years, right? You got to rebuild all
right.
that credit. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's really good. But I do appreciate your growth. And in that specific instance, you literally called me back and you were like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do
yeah,
it. And I was like, I love my best friend's growth. Like it is literally the thing that has enabled this friendship to continue. So I love that.
yeah, yeah. I remember getting off that call and immediately feeling a sense of, oh, I messed up. Like that did not come out in a way I would have hoped it would have. So now it's my job to like show up for the repair, right? To be like, okay, not only did I disturb my best friend's evening by like just calling and being an asshole, but I need to repair this before the end of the night. Like it was not fair, it was not kind, it was not necessary. I clearly did not communicate well in that moment. And so I remember I sent you a text. I was just like, hi, can, which,
Please, can you call me back?
can you please call me?
Yeah.
And yeah, and we were able to repair that, and I
Which is
apologized,
great.
and
It was great timing because I was like, obviously through my like growth is like been really
yeah,
setting boundaries, speaking up for what I need and like being
yeah,
able to advocate for myself. So that whole time I was like choking back tears and like, okay, now we're not going to be best friends anymore. I was like,
yeah,
no, you know what? I'm going to tell her like that was really out of line and that hurt my feelings. And so I was like staging the text message in my mind and I picked up my phone to start typing it. And that's when I saw
yeah.
your message. And I was like, well,
Here
I
we
guess we're
go.
here we're going in. We're going to battle. No, but it was fine. No, and I
Yeah,
loved it. I
yeah,
actually loved
it
that.
worked.
So,
Yeah,
but
it worked out great. But that actually is a good segue into
yes,
how do we take criticism? Because we got some great feedback about just the podcast and what we talked about. It seemed to resonate with a lot of people.
topic
But
wise, yes, we got a lot
yes,
of good feedback.
yes. But we also got some feedback about our microphones, which
Budget production. This is a budget production, you guys.
yes, so for everybody listening, we apologize. We're working on the sound, okay? We hear you. Um, but you and I were talking about the sound prior to even posting the video, and it was one of those things that we were like, do we just scrap it and not post it? Do we just re-record it? Or do we just put ourselves out there? Because that's
Yeah,
the whole episode was about authenticity and
yeah.
failing openly. And so it felt like it would
The
be
topic felt more important to me than the quality. The quality at that point. Yeah.
right, right. But we did wrestle with whether or not to post it because we did recognize there was issues with the microphones. So we were a little sensitive to that
For sure.
to that topic. And you had told me that one of the first
The
pieces of
first
feedback,
feedback I got was, "What microphones are you guys using?" And I was just
right,
like, you know what? I didn't ask you for your opinion, okay?
right,
So annoyed immediately.
yes. So we were both already raw. Like the first piece of feedback you got was about the microphones, and it's at this point it's like I already know about the microphones.
Yeah.
Like stop,
Also,
you know.
who starts their feedback with a negative? Like, don't they know about the feedback sandwich? Like a
The feedback,
positive, then negative. Come on. So that was
right?
annoying too. But go ahead.
Yes. So anyway, my husband John, you already know this. This is for our listener, obviously. We've been together like 19 years. We're about to celebrate our 18th wedding anniversary. So John had finally listened to the podcast, and earlier in the day, I had told him um, about our microphone situation and how we were like, not sure about it, and we weren't sure if we were going to post it, and I had told him that some of the first feedback you got was about the microphones, and I was telling him in a way that was like, this is annoying and like it's so hard, especially for me, like we talked
As a
about in that
perfectionist,
as a
yeah.
perfectionist, like it was really hard for me to be like, okay, we're gonna do this. Like this is a step for me in just putting it out there. It doesn't have to be perfect, you know? And so then when all the feedback is like, shame, shame, shame,
Right.
that it is triggering something in me, right? So the day goes by, John has given me great feedback throughout the day. He's like, you and Misty just are so fun to listen to. I love both of you guys. I love hearing you talk back and forth. Like just wonderful, like supportive,
Yeah, he's
all
for
of the
sure one of
things.
our biggest cheerleaders in friendship and in life. Like he's fantastic. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, he's amazing. And so, and even early in the day, he was like, "Oh my gosh, like we need to get you and Misty in person to record an episode together. Like people have to see how you guys interact like in person together, and we got to get it on video and whatever. And so that was all great. So we are currently planning a family vacation. We are a family of five, and even though John and I are very egalitarian in our house, everything is split up. There's no one parent that does everything. I still like to take on the responsibility of trying to think for everybody else in the house, which is not necessary at all.
Self-inflicted. Yeah.
It's self-inflicted suffering. And so I'm like, laundry needs to get done, and this needs to, all these things need to get planned, and I'm working, and I'm trying. So there's all these external things in my life that are happening that I'm trying to navigate. And so by the end of the day, my body, my mind, my spirit are exhausted. And we are laying in bed, about to go to sleep, and he says, so, did you guys record on your computer or did you record on Misty's computer? And I was like, why are you asking me this,
Exactly.
right?
Already
What?
annoyed. I
Yeah,
I haven't heard this story yet either. I told her to save it for me, so go ahead.
yeah. Misty is hearing this for the first time along with you listeners. So he asked the question, and I immediately am defensive, right? Like my immediate emotional reaction is like, why are you asking this?
Yeah.
And so my tone back to him is, why? Like, why are you asking? He was like, oh, well, I just heard like the quality difference in your microphone and Misty's microphone, and I was wondering
He was
if
yelling about me. Listen, I already know I was the problem in the last episode. I take full responsibility.
which makes me defensive because I'm like, are you criticizing my best friend right now? Are we about to be in a fight?
Are
Like,
John and I fighting?
I don't know. You might have to
Maybe.
take
I'm
that
gonna
up.
call
You
him
might
after
be.
this.
You
No.
might have to call him after this.
He's gonna buy me a microphone.
He is. He is. So, and he actually said that, which we'll get to in this fight
Oh,
I'm about to
he's
cover.
so nice.
Um, so So I'm like, he's like, I just heard the quality difference, and I was wondering if maybe it wasn't like the microphone. I'm wondering if it was because you recorded on, your computer. It was a difference of whose computer the podcast was recorded on. And I was just like, no, like we already know the difference in quality, like, and I just tell him like how we recorded and what we recorded on. And he was like, you seem really upset about this. Like, why? Like, I wasn't trying to be, like, I wasn't criticizing. Like, I was genuinely just curious. I know this bothered you guys earlier. And so I was just trying to think of ways to maybe provide some helpful technical support,
This
basically.
feels exactly like the confrontation I had earlier in the day with my partner. I was like, we already know. We literally did a sound test between each
Yeah.
other on the call, but the recording sounded different. So anyway, yeah, he was like, I'm literally not trying to fight with you. I was just
Yeah.
asking. And I was like, you're never allowed to listen again. No.
Right, yeah.
So bad.
He's like, "Why is this upsetting you?" And for me, in the moment, I was tired. I was dysregulated. I was for sure not in a place to be able to receive what was an attempt at connection, right? Like I perceived his attempt at connection as criticism
For sure.
because it was something that I was already sensitive about. And because I was already sensitive about it, I was not ready to receive any type of feedback about it. And it wasn't even feedback, really. He wasn't saying it
He was
sounded bad.
literally
And
asking questions. He's being
yeah,
curious about our process. And
right. Like,
I'm offended right now too. So I'm going to say we are offended.
and we were, yeah, exactly. So then he says, at no point in anything I told you did I tell you it was bad. It didn't sound bad. He said, I could hear both of you clearly, and that wasn't the problem. you just said it was a problem, and so I was trying to be helpful. He's like, honestly, if you hadn't told me that it was a problem earlier, I probably wouldn't have even said anything about it. And I was just like, so it's my fault?
How many times do we do that though? Because we're so self-critical. We will
Right.
tell everyone, like even with art projects, like I've noticed this, like I've been trying to get back into art.
Yeah.
And someone will be like, "Oh, it looks good." And I'm like, "I know, but don't look at this piece or that piece." Like we will just start pointing out all of our flaws and exposing ourselves to other people, which then leaves us more vulnerable for their, feedback slash criticism. And then it's like
Yes.
we literally put ourselves into that position as like a defense, but
Yeah.
also now we're already geared up for like, and so don't say anything about it because
Right.
I already know.
Don't
So
even talk about
crazy.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not
So,
talking
so,
about it.
so like in my mind in that moment, like one of the things that, I mean, when you're with somebody for as long as John and I have been together, you communicate the same language because you've been with each other for so long. So that is unfortunate for me because now he has all the psychological language and then he uses it against me, right? And not in a bad way. Like he's a good guy, but he's like, um, your reaction to this feels disproportionate to what we're talking about. And I want to try to understand you. And at this point, that's just making me more angry. Like, don't use my language
Yeah.
against me.
Also, don't tell me how my feelings are proportionate or not.
Yes. Like, I was completely unreasonable in this situation. He was very calm. He was just attempting to connect. Like, all of this, once I was able to, like, pause and say, I am the person who is in the wrong here. This is a me problem right now. And what I really wanted to do was crawl under my weighted blanket and turn away from him and just
Fainting
withdraw.
goat. You're a good fainting
Yes,
goat. Yes.
correct. And it took everything in me to say, don't turn around, don't turn away from him, like stay here. Stay in this frustration with him and communicate what is happening inside of you right now. And so I did, but that was super hard, right? It was super hard to say, okay, there had been a bunch of other things earlier in the day that we had just I was just really irritable. And again, we're planning this family vacation, we have work, and so all day, the last couple days it had been me just getting irritable about a variety of things like, you need to make sure to do the Disney fast track at this time, and I'm trying to manage everybody's time. And
Disney
he's like,
World Family of Five sounds like a nightmare, so I would
it
also be overstimulated.
yes, yes. So I really am reactive with him the last few days because I'm stressed out, but he's also stressed out because he's doing just as much stuff. Like he is organizing all the travel stuff and the rental cars and the hotels, and he's doing all the things too. So we're both coming into communication with each other already overstimulated and already having difficulty managing our emotional response in the immediate here and now. And I think that is really difficult to recognize when both people are dysregulated and when your communication is just you're not attuned to one another. And so that was happening to us a lot in that moment until, we were able to say, okay, this is actually what's happening. We're just both really tired. And this was not an attempt at criticism. This was an attempt to connect. And so we repaired it. But that leads me to kind of, I guess, more of what we wanted to talk about this episode, which is how do we learn how to take criticism, and like constructive criticism. And um, So I want to know about maybe a time that you have been maybe constructively criticized, or somebody had some feedback about something you do or the way you do it, and how have you learned to navigate criticism in your
Mm.
life?
Yeah, I'm still terrible at it, I'll be honest, because
Yeah.
I am a recovering people pleaser, okay? So
Hmm.
anyone that I can detect may be unhappy with me immediately affects my self-worth as a person. So, um, but that is something I have been working on for a long time. And in my last
Yeah.
job, actually, I oversaw a help desk. And so we would get a lot of feedback on like customer service, what was happening. And so when it wasn't personally directed at me, it was super easy. I'm like, okay, yeah, like can look at this objectively. We can for sure address this, right? I have the book, A Complaint is a Gift. And so it just
Yeah.
kind of teaches you how to work down, right? And how we can make things
Right.
better. When it comes to my personal life, a complaint or negative feedback is pretty much the end of my day. Like
It's the
it's
end. Yeah.
be a spiral. I
It's
remember
not.
I have a short story that's not exactly related to that, but I remember I was working one time and I called this guy because I needed to get information from him. And I was like, "Hey, good morning. Can I get this?" And he was like, "Yes, 5, whatever," and hung up. And I was like, "That's really weird." So I called back. I'm like, "Hey, dude, are you okay?" And he's like, "I don't like you."
Oh my gosh.
And I was immediately like, I have to quit my job. I'm never coming back here. Like, what did I do? I was like, oh, okay. And I hung up the phone, and for like 3 days, that's all I could think about. It's like, what did I do? Replaying every interaction, right? And I was like, why?
Because clearly it's your fault
Why? Yeah.
that he
Not
doesn't
even
like
thinking
you.
like maybe this guy is just, who cares, right? And he wasn't
Right.
even like a friend. It was just like some random guy at work. So that's not necessarily feedback, but that's just an example of my responses to things. So
Yeah.
for me personally, I think one of the most triggering comments is something that where I feel that my intelligence is being questioned,
Mm.
which is
Hmm.
really funny because I definitely don't like promote myself as super smart, super intelligent. Like I don't have a college degree yet. I am working
Yeah.
towards one. But I have put off doing a lot of things in my life because of my own, lack of self-esteem, lack of self-confidence. So
Right.
I think the feedback on my intelligence just feeds into my own insecurity of not being smart enough.
Right.
And so anytime, and it's like, here's a really easy example. We planted a bunch of trees last year because we got our new property. And one of the trees in one of the holes, like I've planted 3 trees there and they just keeps dying. And so I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
there's obviously a soil issue, right? Something in
Hmm.
that specific soil in that area. Maybe there's more caliche, right? So I'm
Right.
thinking through this problem. And my partner is like, well, have you tried doing fertilizer? And I was immediately like, are you kidding me right now? Like,
Like, I'm not an
I
idiot, right?
I was so annoyed. I was just like, don't, you know what? I didn't ask you your opinion. I was literally just talking. I was so mad. And then I was like, why am I getting so mad? Because he thinks that, like, fertilizer is so obvious. For someone to
Right.
ask me if I thought of it, to me, it means clearly they think I'm stupid, right?
Right. The
But then
narrative is, I don't know anything. Right.
stuff like that. So those are the things that immediately I'm like, they think I'm stupid, but really
Right.
what's happening is my own insecurity about my intelligence or the way I'm being perceived by other people
Right.
is right there at the forefront all the time. It's my number one concern. It's my number one focus. So anytime
Hmm.
somebody hits on that, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
this isn't
Yeah.
even about them. This is about me. This is not about them. They're not trying to attack me. Like I literally just had this conversation with my partner 2 days ago, and it was not about the microphone thing, but it was like same thing like with John, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to attack you. I'm just asking you questions, and like I would be the last person to want to attack you. Like, I'm on your side, I'm your cheerleader. And I'm like, why
Right.
does it feel so much more offensive when it's someone that we love, right? So I'm
Right.
getting a lot better at criticism from people I don't know, or feedback from people I don't know,
Hmm.
because I don't cherish their um, opinion of me, right?
Yeah, because at the end, it doesn't matter if you don't have a relationship with
It
them.
really
Yeah.
doesn't. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even know them. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
their mental health. I don't know their life
Yeah.
situation. Everyone is responding from a place of their own, like, perception of the world. And so I don't know where they
Absolutely.
are. So I can't take that on. But people that I have a close, intimate relationship, like my close friends, certain family members, it's like, why does this sting so much more? And so that's
Yeah.
definitely something I'm trying to work on, is just like, I hear this saying all the time. It says a trigger is a window to something inside of yourself that needs attention.
Right.
And so the second those are coming up, I'm like, okay, this is just my own insecurity about
Hmm.
the lies that I've been telling myself for years and years
Hmm.
about not being smart enough, or perpetuating things that I was, told
Yeah.
when I was younger, like, you're just not good at school, or, things like that. So maybe
Right.
school's not for you. And so
Yeah,
it,
and I think that's a really good point. So from a psychological perspective, just to bring some, I guess,
yeah,
psychoeducation in for our listeners. So on the therapeutic side or the psychoeducation side, there is, our internal critic is shaped by our early authority figures. So the critic inside of you, which if you're a Freudian or a psychoanalyst, they're going to call that your kind of your super ego. We have these three parts of ourselves. We have this reality principle, which we would call our ego. It kind of keeps in balance this highly moral, perfectionistic side of us that wants to be perfect, and it keeps in check our pleasure principle, which is like just hedonistic and pleasure seeking and no boundaries. And so the ego's job is really to manage these two parts of ourselves. But that super ego, that internal critic that's always like, you're dumb, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, you don't deserve whatever, you could have done that better, um, sometimes it will dominate all of our thinking. And that's usually the voice that comes up when we're hearing feedback from people we love. Because the actual fear is, I'm going to lose this love, or they're going to want to leave, or I'm not good enough for them, or they don't actually see me and I don't belong. And so there's all of these fears that are basically being guarded by this reaction to the criticism. And so I think you're right. It is a window into our internal critic, and it can give us some good feedback about our own narratives, about what is it that we believe about ourselves. Is it, I believe I'm not smart enough? I believe I'm unlovable. I believe that I'm a burden to people around me. Getting curious about why we respond to criticism the way we do is going to be some really helpful feedback about our own narratives that are guiding our behaviors.
yeah. And something that I really have been kind of leaning into lately, because I've done, some therapy and things in my past, which is
Hmm.
kind of what kind of pushed me in this direction to also get into that field, is
Yeah.
as, a 40 plus year old woman,
Yeah.
being able to, like, logically address some of those things, right? Because you're like, am I incompetent? Like, am I stupid? Like, okay,
Hmm.
I've been paying my bills. I've held a job. Like, I've done all these things. Like, kind of taking inventory. It's really easy to make a list of your quote unquote failures, right? Um,
Yeah.
but really taking an inventory of your accomplishments has been something that I've always struggled with. Like, I try to write my resume. I cannot, I'm like, came to work, didn't get fired, never been written up. Like, but can I
Right.
be like, supercharged worker attacking the, like, I
Yeah.
can't do any of that stuff. I'm like, ooh, I feels like a lie. They're gonna like, my imposter syndrome kicks in. Um,
Right.
but something I've really been trying to work on lately is just like reframing failure,
Hmm.
which then, of course, has to make you reframe what success is. Because I
Right.
feel like um, trying something and not quote unquote succeeding at it, right, is a failure. Oh, like you failed, and then you carry this shame. And then you start labeling yourself. Well, I failed at it, and therefore I must be a failure, right?
Hmm.
But an example, my stepdaughter is about to do her first triathlon. She's 10,
Hmm.
and she's like, I don't know if I'm going to win, but here's what my goal is. And I was like, that's really good. And I said, you know what? It doesn't even matter if you win. I think that just participating in it and maybe finishing, right? Like make your goal be, I'm going to finish it, even if it's hard. And don't set like a time goal. Don't set an expectation of winning, placing at a certain point. It's like, I don't care if it takes a whole day. I don't care if the race is done. I'm going to make it to where that finish line was. Like it might be down by the time we get there, right?
Yes, yes.
Because if nothing else, at the end of the day, you have redefined what success looks like for you, right? And that's just
Hmm.
not giving up in this moment. It's not a specific goal.
Right.
And so just putting those on myself, right? Like I've just recently started massage therapy school, and I'm like, what if I spend all this money and I'm a failure? Like I can't get a job, I can't do whatever. And I'm like, okay, that's dumb.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, okay, so what does success look like, right?
Yeah.
And so then I broke it down even smaller, and I'm like, okay, success to somebody might be like, I finished the class and I get licensed, right? I'm like, no, that's not even really my goal. My goal is I want to go in and I want to learn something that I've wanted to learn since I was 16 years old. And whether or not that becomes a career for me is side effect, right? That would be a
Right.
bonus. But for me, it's pursuing something I'm interested in for me, not
Hmm.
having that end goal of, and then I'm going to have this business and I'm going to make $1 million a year, right? The likelihood of that happening, because I'm also a very big researcher, the
Yes.
likelihood of being a rich massage therapist is very, very, very slim. And the
Right.
average career span for a massage therapist is like 5 years because of burnout,
Hmm.
right? So I'm like, okay.
Right.
So I just need to have like realistic expectations, but then comparison also not a great idea. So for me, redefining what does that look like has been something that's been really powerful. But I think in doing that, with our fears and insecurities of a child, you can go back and say, like, was that really a failure? What was my actual objective, right? I was told I failed because I came in last place, or I was
Hmm.
told I failed because I didn't get an A on that report card. I got C's, right? Or
Right.
for eighth grade, I had an F for in literature for the whole
Right.
school year. Um, but that did not mean I was a failure, and it didn't mean I was a poor learner, right? And so
Absolutely.
going back with my adult brain and looking at those
Hmm.
situations, be like, yeah, my parents were getting divorced, and all this, like my whole
Yeah.
life got blown up, and then I was
Right.
punished for it, which made me even more depressed. Like, of course I
Yeah.
wasn't getting that grade up, like,
Right.
so
Yeah, absolutely.
going back
Which,
and just reframing those things are helping me try to form kind of new thought processes as an adult, which are kind of bringing me out of that. So
yeah, I think you bring up like such an important point when it comes to the holistic part of being human, is that our reactions to experiences are not just internal, right? Like our external environments definitely impact how we are engaging in the world. So definitely as kids, we don't really have a lot of autonomy. Like we have to live where our parents live. We're gonna eat what they buy or what they make for dinner. Like you don't really have a lot of autonomy as a child. And so of course, yeah, you're gonna have a lot of kids who are having difficulty doing well in school and showing up and being able to be present if they're, in homes that maybe are not as stable, or their parents are going through a divorce, or there's external things that are impacting them, right? External expectations, and that even as we get into adulthood, we have all of these external expectations from our culture. So in America, because we're Americans, so that's our culture, we're told that success means having a high level job, making a certain amount of money. We have all these expectations of achieving a certain level of success. And so if you don't achieve that level of success, then you automatically internalize yourself as a failure.
Yeah.
And I was reading an article recently, and I don't remember. I'll see if I can find it. We can put it in the podcast notes. But it was talking about how we have lost the ability to recognize that being ordinary is the goal. Like, you're gonna have the most peace if you're just kind of enjoying your experience here as a human. If striving is something that brings you a lot of joy and peace and excitement, then that's great. But that's not for every single person, right? So I think that we lose because of our culture and all of this outside pressure to do all the things and be all the things and achieve and maximize. If you listen to the language on social media, it's hack this, maximize this, and it's always disembodied. It's like, how can I get through this faster? It's never, how can I enjoy this experience of becoming and learning about myself and taking my time and being fully present. So we get wrapped up in the cultural narrative of faster, harder, stronger, and that really does kind of invade the way and the narrative we have about ourselves and what failure means. Versus us saying, what does failure mean for me? So, like for you, you were like, wait a minute, like, what does failure actually mean for Misty on a personal level? Not what does it mean for my culture? What does it mean for my family? What does it mean for, the expectations of other people? But what does failure actually mean for me? And I think if people can ask themselves that question, they can get to a deeper knowledge of themselves and what they want in their lives.
I think that's going to be a perfect tie back into now where that criticism comes in, right? Because like, we're going to do a very unlikely scenario. I take this class. I don't become a licensed massage therapist at the end, right? There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be like, oh, you wasted your time, or you're a failure now, or you're, massage school dropout, whatever. The
Yeah.
judgments that we put on other people, either knowingly or unknowingly, and a lot of our judgments are just um, old lies about ourselves that we're projecting onto other people, right?
Right.
So some of those criticisms now that we may be hearing from somebody else are going to be things that are going to be triggering to us because we had to kind of process through that, like, no, that's not what failure is going to mean to me, right? But as the second
Mhm.
somebody says it, you're gonna be like, I knew it, I knew it, right? It's kind of that gotcha moment, right, where
Right.
that trigger comes back into us now. And so I
100%. Yeah.
I think there has to be something already that exists in you for that
Hmm.
criticism or feedback to hit you as negative, right? If it's something
Yeah.
you already, like, for sure isn't true, like if someone accused you of being a home wrecker, you would be like,
Right.
that's ridiculous, right?
Clearly not true.
And
Yeah.
obviously not.
Yeah.
But if they were like, you probably cheated on your doctor exam,
Hmm.
right? You
Right.
might be like, well, of course not. You're going to get defensive about it because you worked
Yeah.
super hard and did all that work. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that our own expectations on ourselves or our own insecurities definitely get highlighted
Hmm.
through that.
Yeah. So I think one of the difficulties that people have is identifying those narratives for themselves. Like, what are the narratives that you have for yourself? And one of the things I really enjoy is you and I talk a lot about, our star signs and, and personality tests and different types of personality. And the reason those are fun is that there are these personality constructs that we do see that people tend to have temperaments that do fall along some of these categories. And so I think maybe it's helpful to try to identify your own little temperament and your own way of being in the world. So I'll give you an example. I tend to have a little bit of, we've talked about that perfectionistic kind of obsessive compulsive over analysis, rumination, self kind of um, being fear of being like morally flawed, right? Like I'm like, I don't want to be a bad person. So much of my interaction in the world is around that fear or that temperament, that personality structure of fear of looking irresponsible, fear of looking like I am morally flawed, like I am a bad person. So I am going to receive feedback through the lens of that underlying fear,
Yeah.
and then that's going to make me be, defensive or whatever. So for me to receive feedback, I have to change that narrative in my head and say, this mistake doesn't mean that you're irresponsible. This mistake doesn't mean that you're morally flawed. Like me calling my best friend and just laying into her about an expectation that I had that I never told her that I had, and then I just expected her to read my mind, does not mean that I'm morally flawed. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It means I need to do a better job of communicating to my best friend. But I think that it would be easy. It's easy for people to just lean into and collapse into those underlying fears of, well, this just proved to me that I am morally flawed. I just made
Yeah.
my best friend cry. Clearly, I'm
Only a little
irresponsible.
bit. Only a little bit.
Yeah. So I think getting curious about your underlying fears and re-narrating that for yourself,
So
right? And whenever
yeah,
you do have a mistake.
I was just reading yesterday in my social psychology class. I am trying to remember which one it was. It's like you buy the red car and then you see red cars everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. It's the Bader Meinhof.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that we tend to do that a lot with our insecurities, right? And so we're already feeling it, and so it's easy for us to pick up in other people that they're, seeing it too or whatever. So I think there's
Yes.
something to that as well. Not just the red
Yes.
car everywhere or I got the new iPhone. I don't have an iPhone, but if I did, I would probably
Yeah.
see other people with that same phone. So,
Yeah. So if we were going to kind of wrap up this criticism thing, how do we take criticism? How do we help ourselves to receive it and not be reactive? I think the first step in that is in terms of this mind body spirit discussion, I think the first step is recognizing where your regulation is already. So if you haven't slept, if you're hungry, if you have a lot of work stuff going on, if things in your world are just busy, then I think that's the first step is recognizing that and being kind to yourself and being like, okay, I am tired. I just need to go to bed and take a shower. I love you. Can we have this conversation when I'm not tired and when I'm not reactive, and the hope is that you have a friend or a partner, whoever you're with, that's going to be able to receive that, and know that you're not going anywhere, which sometimes isn't the case. There's a lot of people with an anxious attachment style who struggle with that, and that's their work to kind of handle, right? So first part is knowing, is my external environment having an impact on the way I am perceiving this communication or this feedback from whoever it might be. And then the second part is to always have a pause in your reaction, to practice the pause, right? Which you did a very good job of when I was when I called you and was having my moment. I visibly saw the pause, and I think that your pause was actually a cue. It helped bring me back into my body, and it gave me space to pause and be like, oh no, I definitely have made a terrible mistake here, right? But we need either to be the person who is engaging with the pause, and the hope is you have people in your life who are going to give you the space for that pause as well. So practicing the pause in the interaction can be really helpful for the feedback. Like especially at work, right? Like sometimes work environments like are just volatile and people are just projecting all their insecurities on each other. So being the person in the room who can just pause the back and forth for a minute and like create some space, a lot of times that can help just bring everything back to what's important. Like, okay, what are we actually talking about here? What actually matters here?
I think something that's really at least for me, right, is when you're in those
Yeah,
kind of interactions, you've
yeah,
already anticipated what the person's going to say. You're like, and now they're going to say this to me, and so you're kind of gearing up that fight. And when they take that pause, you're like, that's that's not what that's not what's supposed to happen,
right. I was waiting
right?
to fight. Yeah.
It really throws off the anticipation of that confrontation, which kind of shifts
Yes.
that energy, and you could be like, okay, like you said, now you're
Yes.
like, oh, maybe I was taking this up to a 10. And
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. Like working on our de-escalation
yeah,
process, right? And then the last, I guess, everything always comes down to repair after rupture. Repair, repair, repair. I made a mistake here. I read John's attempt at connection as criticism. And so it was my job to repair that because I treated him unfairly and I treated him poorly. And he was right to say, I never said anything negative about this because he didn't. It was me. It was all internalized, frustration. So I think the really important part is in psychotherapy, we call it, we have to pay attention to the process, not just the content of what the person is saying. So people aren't always going to communicate and use the words that we hope that they'll use. People are limited by their vocabularies and by their experiences. So the hope is that we can receive whatever they tell us in good faith. If it's somebody you love and you trust, then you really do have to lean into, I know this person loves me. I do trust this person. What the words that they're using are making me feel very angry, right? Or they're making me feel very defensive, but I am going to pause and I'm trying to understand their process. What are they actually saying underneath these words? What's actually trying to be communicated? So for John, what was actually trying to be communicated is I am excited for you guys. I want to be supportive of you guys. I want to help you guys be successful. I hear that you're frustrated about this problem, and I want you to know that I heard you. I heard you tell me this was frustrating for you. Obviously, that's not how it went in the moment, right? So we're gonna fail. We're gonna mess it up. But you want to try in those moments to get to a point of what are they actually saying here? Not the words. We don't want to pay attention to the words all the time.
yeah,
What is the behavior and the engagement trying to say? Are they just trying to connect? Sometimes it is just criticism and you deal with that. But a lot of times it's an attempt to connect and we get to decide if we want to receive that connection or not. So.
yeah. And if we're going into those situations already judging ourselves or criticizing ourselves, it's going to make it seem a lot worse. So I think a bigger help in that is just giving ourselves a little bit more empathy and grace. Like, right, I already know we're not perfect. And hopefully the sound is better this week, you guys. Really
Yes.
hope so. But
Yes.
yeah,
So anyway, we hope that you guys will continue to give us feedback. We love the feedback. We are clearly working on taking constructive criticism. So go ahead and send us that as well. We will
Yeah.
read it and we will
I will cry only for a little bit, but
only for
this
a
is
little
good.
while.
It's a practice. It's a practice. And I'm going to go
Yeah.
apologize to my partner for snapping over the
Perfect.
sound comment. So,
I love that. All right. Well, everybody have a great week. We are going to try to be putting out these podcasts once a week. And we hope that you guys will listen.
all right.
All
Hey,
right.
see you guys next
Bye.
time. Bye.